The air in the restaurant felt colder than usual. The thermostat was set to the same 75 degrees it always was, but Caroline could feel a chill creeping up her arms. It was an icy premonition that had nothing to do with the temperature. Across the heavy mahogany table, her husband, Michael, was staring more at his phone screen than at the plate of risotto he usually loved. The faint smile playing at the corner of his lips was certainly not for her. That smile was directed at another world, hidden behind the illuminated glass in his hands. Caroline set her spoon down carefully, trying not to make a sound that might interrupt her husband's enjoyment. For the past 6 months, this scene had become their daily life. Michael would come home from work, drop his briefcase, shower, and then cling to his phone as if it were his life support. Their conversations had become brief and functional, limited to questions about whether he'd had dinner or if he had anything planned for the next day. "Honey, how was your meeting this afternoon?" Caroline asked. Her voice sounded a little more brittle than she would have liked. She just wanted to break down the invisible wall that had risen between them. Michael looked up, his eyes taking a second to focus on her, like someone just returning from a long journey. "It went fine, as always," he replied curtly, before his thumb began to dance nimbly across the screen again. Caroline took a deep breath. She was a woman who had built her own success from the ground up. Her fashion boutique, Caroline's, now had 3 branches in the sprawling city of New York, and her investment portfolio, which she carefully managed herself, had grown into a source of wealth that far surpassed Michael's administrative salary. She was used to analyzing problems, finding solutions, and acting decisively. But in her marriage, she felt powerless. She knew something was wrong, but she kept hoping it was just a passing phase, a temporary boredom that would soon fade. That night, her hope shattered into a million pieces. After that silent dinner, Michael didn't go straight to his study as usual. He followed Caroline into the living room and sat on the sofa opposite her, placing his phone face down on the coffee table. That simple act felt so formal, so heavy, that Caroline's stomach churned. "Caroline, I have to tell you something," Michael began. His voice had a flat, emotionless tone, like a doctor about to deliver a bad diagnosis. Caroline simply nodded. Her heart began to pound. She clasped her hands, which suddenly felt cold and damp. "I think our marriage is over," Michael continued. His eyes were fixed on the wall behind Caroline, avoiding direct eye contact. "I've thought about it long and hard. Let's get a divorce." The word divorce hung in the air, sharp and lethal. Caroline's world seemed to stop. The ticking of the grandfather clock, usually a reassuring background noise, now sounded like the strikes of a giant gavel. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her throat was tight. Michael took his wife's silence as a sign of resignation. He continued his explanation in the same cold tone. "It's not your fault, Caroline. You've been a good wife, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I'm still in love with Jessica." That name, Jessica, the ex-girlfriend Michael had broken up with 8 years ago, long before he met Caroline. The name Michael occasionally mentioned in nostalgic stories, the name that had always made Caroline feel like an understudy in the movie of her husband's life. "I've been back in touch with her for the past few months," Michael confessed without a hint of guilt. "And we've realized we should never have broken up. I want a fresh start." Caroline finally found her voice, though it was just a hoarse whisper. "A fresh start?" "Yes." Michael nodded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "For that, we need to settle things as quickly and fairly as possible. Let's just split the assets down the middle. That will be the fastest way. This house, the savings, the investments, that's fair, right?" That question was like a second slap, more painful than the request for a divorce. Fair. This house had been paid for entirely with the annual bonuses from Caroline's business. Most of the savings and almost all the investments came from the profits of her boutiques and her skill in the stock market. Michael's salary was enough to cover daily expenses and his car payments, nothing more. But in Michael's eyes, all of it was our property, the fruits of an effort from which he was ready to harvest half to start a new life with another woman. Caroline didn't answer. She just stared at her husband, the man who had slept beside her for 7 years, the man whose career she had supported, the man she had loved sincerely. That man now looked like a stranger negotiating a corporate takeover instead of ending a marriage. That night, Caroline couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she got out of bed, thirsty. She walked slowly to the kitchen for a glass of water. As she passed Michael's study, its door ajar, she heard her husband's voice. It was no longer flat or cold, it was filled with laughter and warmth. "Just a little longer, sweetheart. It'll be over soon," Michael was saying to someone on the phone. "The process will be quick. I've already told her." There was a brief silence. Caroline held her breath, pressing her ear to the crack in the door. How did she react? She was in shock, of course, but she's weak. Always has been. Michael's laugh came again, light and carefree. "She won't complicate things. Caroline is so in love with me. She'll sign whatever papers I put in front of her. Don't you worry, my love. All her assets, our assets, will be the capital for the life we've always dreamed of. You'll quit your job and we'll travel the world, just like we always said. Our assets. The life we've always dreamed of." Those two phrases struck Caroline like a bolt of lightning. The pain searing in her heart transformed into a glacial cold. The tears that had been threatening to overflow seemed to dry up instantly. She backed away from the door slowly, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. She returned to the bedroom but didn't get back in bed. She stood before the large, full-length mirror in the corner of the room and observed her reflection. A woman with swollen eyes and a pale face. A woman who had been called weak. A woman considered a fool. But what she saw in her own eyes was no longer weakness. What she saw was the flicker of a flame that had just begun to burn, a cold, focused, and lethal flame. Her pain had metamorphosed into something else, something stronger. Determination. Michael was dead wrong. This war would indeed be over quickly, but not in the way he imagined. Caroline wouldn't complicate things in court because there would be nothing left to fight for there. She was going to take back every dollar, every share, every brick she had built with her sweat and tears. In the silence of that night, Caroline made a vow to herself. Michael could have his past, but Caroline was taking back her entire future. The next morning, the sun rose as usual, but Caroline's world had completely changed. When she came downstairs for breakfast, Michael was already at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through the news on his tablet. He looked up as Caroline arrived. Seeing her, a trace of surprise crossed his face. Caroline did not look like a woman whose world had just collapsed. She had already showered. She was wearing a crisp navy blue blouse, her hair pulled back in an elegant bun. There was no trace of tears on her face, only an almost unnatural calm. "Good morning," Caroline greeted, her voice steady and quiet. She took a slice of toast and spread jam on it, her movements unhurried. "Good morning," Michael replied, a little awkwardly. He watched her, trying to read her expression. "Are you okay?" "I will be," Caroline answered, looking Michael directly in the eye without flinching. "I thought about last night, and you're right. There's no point in holding on to something that's broken. Let's just end this amicably." Michael looked relieved. A faint smile appeared on his lips. Just as he expected, Caroline was submissive and wouldn't create drama. "I'm glad you're being so mature about this, Caroline. You've taken a weight off my shoulders." "I need some time alone today," Caroline continued, "to clear my head and get organized. I'll be working from my home office. Don't worry about me." Of course. Take all the time you need," Michael said with a magnanimous tone, feeling like the wisest man in the world. He finished his coffee, grabbed his briefcase, and left with a spring in his step, convinced that the biggest obstacle had been easily overcome. As soon as the sound of Michael's car faded down the street, Caroline's mask of calm fell away. She didn't cry, but her jaw tightened, and her eyes filled with a cold determination. Instead of going to the bedroom to weep, she strode purposefully to her study. That room was her command center, the place where her business was born and had grown. Today, that room would be the headquarters for the most important operation of her life. She locked the door, something she rarely did. Then she opened the safe hidden behind a landscape painting. Inside were not just jewels, but thick stacks of original documents. She laid them all out on the large desk: the deed to the house, the titles to the condo she inherited from her parents, the property deeds for her leased commercial spaces, stock portfolio statements, the incorporation papers for her company, Caroline's, and the financial reports from the last 5 years. She turned on her laptop and opened a spreadsheet. Systematically, she began to catalog every asset they owned, dividing them into 3 columns. First column, exclusively mine. This contained assets she owned before the marriage, like her downtown Manhattan condo and the gold bullion inherited from her grandmother. These assets were legally hers, but she knew a clever lawyer of Michael's might try to contest them. Second column, fruit of my efforts. This was the longest column, the house they lived in, whose mortgage she had paid off with her annual business bonuses, the villa in the Hamptons, purchased under the company's name, the 3 boutique locations and all their inventory, the stock and fund portfolio, now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, all generated from her business profits. Third column, joint property. Caroline almost let out a derisive laugh. This column contained only one thing: a joint bank account whose balance fluctuated for living expenses, and 2 cars hers, bought with cash, and Michael's, which was still being paid off in installments. Seeing it laid out on the screen, her anger became crystal clear. Michael's demand to split everything down the middle was nothing short of daylight robbery. Caroline's hand went to her phone. Her fingers hesitated for a moment over the contact for her company's usual lawyer. No, she couldn't use him. Michael knew him too. She needed someone new, someone unexpected, someone with a formidable reputation. She remembered a name a business partner had mentioned in passing, a lawyer known as a wolf in sheep's clothing for his gentle demeanor and lethal strategies. She searched the name online, Price & Associates. Without hesitation, she dialed the number on the screen. "Good morning, Price & Associates," a woman's voice answered. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Mr. James Price." "It's urgent," Caroline said, her voice firm. After a brief hold, a deep, calm voice greeted her. "This is James Price." "Hello, Mr. Price. My name is Caroline Wells. I was referred by a colleague. I need a personal consultation as soon as possible. It's regarding a divorce and asset protection. Has the petition already been filed?" James got straight to the point. "No," Caroline replied quickly. "And I want this to be over before that happens. I don't want a fight in court. I want the war to be over before the enemy even knows it has begun." There was a short silence on the other end of the line, as if James were sizing up his potential client. "I like your approach, Mrs. Wells. Can you be at my office at noon today?" "No," Caroline cut in. "I don't want to be seen visiting a lawyer's office. Can we meet somewhere else? Somewhere discreet." Again, silence. Then James's voice returned, this time with a hint of impressed amusement. "Very well. There's a small cafe called The Daily Grind near Madison Avenue. It's a quiet place. I'll see you there for lunch." After hanging up, Caroline immediately contacted the second person on her team, her financial advisor and stockbroker, Beatrice. Beatrice was a pragmatic, middle-aged woman who had managed a portion of Caroline's investments with great loyalty for years. "Beatrice, I need your help," Caroline said without preamble. "I'm divorcing Michael." There was a moment of silence. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Caroline. How can I help?" Beatrice replied, her tone professional but empathetic. "I need to liquidate some positions as soon as possible, but gradually, so as not to impact the market or draw attention. And I need to open a new brokerage account and a new bank account at a different bank, completely unlinked from my current ones. Everything must be done in absolute secrecy." "Understood," Beatrice said. "Send me the list of stocks you want to liquidate first. I'll prepare all the necessary paperwork for the new accounts. We can use a fully digital system, so no physical mail gets sent to your house." "Thank you, Beatrice. I owe you one." "Don't be silly. Just consider it a large-scale portfolio restructuring," Beatrice said, trying to lighten the mood. After finishing the call, Caroline felt a little stronger. The gears were already turning. Now it was time for the first real move, the first step in taking back her life. She opened the online banking app on her laptop and logged into the joint account. The balance showed about $40,000. Most of it had been automatically deposited 3 days ago as dividends from one of her investments. Michael clearly didn't know or care about the source of the funds, only that the money was there. Caroline opened the transfer menu. She entered the account number for her company, Caroline's. In the amount field, she typed $30,000. In the memo field, she wrote, "Payment to fabric suppliers, fall collection. It was a perfectly logical reason, and one that could be proven with a pro forma invoice she could create at any time. Her finger hovered over the confirm button. Her heart was racing. This was the point of no return. This was the first act of actively concealing assets. A tremor of fear ran through her, but behind it came a stronger wave of empowerment. She pressed the button. Transaction successful. She closed the laptop, returned all the documents to the safe, and locked it. She walked out of the study, her face resuming the same calm mask from the morning. She went to the kitchen, made herself a chamomile tea, and sat by the window, looking out at the garden. When Michael came home that afternoon, he found Caroline reading a book in the living room. "Feeling a bit calmer?" he asked. "Yes," Caroline replied softly, closing the book. "I'm ready to start the process whenever you are." Michael smiled, satisfied. He had no idea that the real process had begun that morning, and that he was not invited at all. Over the next few weeks, Caroline led a double life with the precision of a seasoned actress. On the surface, she was the hurt but stoic wife. Her shoulders drooped a little. She rarely smiled, and her gaze often seemed lost in sadness. This performance was utterly convincing, especially to Michael, whose ego was too large to see beyond what he wanted to see. "So, what papers are usually needed?" Caroline asked one night as they ate in uncomfortable silence, picking at her food as if she had lost her appetite. "I don't know anything about this." Michael, feeling superior and in control, explained with feigned patience. "It's not complicated. My lawyer will prepare everything. The most important things are our IDs and the marriage certificate. Then there will be a settlement agreement. You just have to sign. The more you cooperate, the faster this will be over, and we can both start our new lives." "Start a new life," Caroline repeated under her breath, like a painful whisper to herself. Inside, she scoffed. Of course Michael wanted it over quickly. The faster it was, the less time Caroline would have to seek legal advice or think of ways to spoil his plans. "I just want this to end peacefully," Caroline added, looking at Michael with intentional tears in her eyes. "I don't want a fight." "Of course there won't be a fight." Michael patted the back of Caroline's hand, a gesture of comfort that felt deeply insulting. "I'll make sure everything goes smoothly." But behind that mask of submission, Caroline was moving silently, quickly, and efficiently. The meeting with her lawyer James at the cafe had been her strategic turning point. James, a man in his 50s with a paternal appearance and thin-rimmed glasses, did not look like a wolf at all. He spoke softly and listened intently, never interrupting Caroline's story. "The situation is clear, Mrs. Wells," James said after Caroline finished. "The key here is timing. Until a divorce petition is officially filed with the court, any assets in your name are legally yours to manage, including selling or transferring them. We are not doing anything illegal. We are simply restructuring the ownership of your personal assets." His strategy was simple yet ingenious. The first focus was on the easiest assets to liquidate and least directly tied to Michael's name: the investments. The next day, Caroline was on her way to one of her boutiques. As she drove, she spoke on her hands-free system with her broker Beatrice. Her voice sounded professional and calm, a stark contrast to her heart, which was beating a little faster than normal. "Beatrice, let's start with the tech stocks. Sell 50% of the Innovatech Solutions holdings," Caroline instructed. "Yes, I'll execute the sale gradually over 3 days to get the best price. The funds will be deposited directly into the new brokerage account, which is all set up," Beatrice reported. "Good. What about the bond funds?" "That's easier. The liquidation process takes 2 to 3 business days. If you'd like, I can process it today." "Process it," Caroline said firmly. As she stopped at a red light, a police car pulled up right beside her. The officer inside glanced in her direction. Caroline's heart skipped a beat. An irrational fear washed over her. She felt like a criminal, even though she was only protecting what was rightfully hers. She took a deep breath and forced herself to remain calm. The light turned green, and she drove on slowly, leaving the patrol car behind. That moment reminded her of the risk she was taking and how important it was to maintain her composure. At home, she had to be constantly vigilant, Michael, increasingly preoccupied with his plans with Jessica, wasn't paying close attention to details, but there were moments that left Caroline breathless. One afternoon, Michael came home early and found a pile of mail on the entryway console. He picked it up and began sorting through it. "Caroline, did your credit card statement not come this month?" he asked absently as he opened his own bill. Caroline's heart stopped for a second. She had switched all her bills to electronic statements a month ago. "Oh, right. I switched everything to e-billing," she replied calmly from the kitchen, bringing him a glass of water. "It's more convenient and saves paper." "Oh, okay," Michael mumbled, his interest already having moved on to his own bill. On another occasion, Michael asked, "I saw the joint account, and the balance is down quite a bit. What did you spend it on?" Caroline had her answer ready. "I used that for the down payment on the silk fabrics coming from India for the new bridal collection. I made the transfer from the company, so it won't be part of our personal asset calculation. Don't worry." She showed him a fake order confirmation email she had prepared on her phone. The explanation, touching on logical, business-related aspects, sounded entirely plausible. Michael, who understood nothing about the inner workings of Caroline's business, simply nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Each successful little lie, each secret transaction that went smoothly, filled her with confidence. She became increasingly adept at covering her tracks. She used a VPN whenever she accessed her secret accounts. She communicated with James and Beatrice through encrypted messaging apps. She was a ghost within her own financial system. One night, Caroline sat in her study long after Michael had fallen asleep. On her laptop screen was a spreadsheet titled Project Independence. It contained the list of all the assets she had secured. She had just received confirmation from Beatrice that the full proceeds from the sale of the tech stocks had been successfully transferred to her new, hidden bank account. With cold satisfaction, she moved the cursor to the row labeled Innovatech Solutions stock. She typed completed in the status column. She looked at the word for a moment. Every completed she typed was another step away from a painful past and another step closer to a future she completely controlled. She closed the laptop. The mask was heavy, but the burden being lifted from her shoulders felt much lighter. She would continue to play the part of the submissive wife until the final curtain fell, and when that moment came, she would be ready to take a bow for her greatest performance alone on the stage. After securing the liquid assets like stocks and funds, Caroline knew the next challenge would be far more complex and dangerous. It was time to move on to the physical assets, blocks of wealth that couldn't be moved with a single click, the real estate. Her eyes were fixed on the most significant target in this category, the luxurious villa in the Hamptons they often used on weekends. The villa had been purchased 3 years prior, not in their personal names, but as an asset of Caroline's company, Caroline's. This fact was both a weak point and the key to her strategy. The plan to sell the villa required extreme meticulousness. This was no longer a silent digital transaction, but a process involving notaries, physical documents, and potential buyers. Here, James's role became crucial. They met this time in a bustling family restaurant during the lunch rush. James explained the plan in a low voice amidst the clamor of the diner. "We will conduct a legitimate sale transaction," James explained. "Caroline's will sell the villa. The buyer will be a new investment company we've set up, Skyview Capital. This company, on paper, will be wholly owned by your mother." Caroline nodded, understanding the direction. "So the money just moves from my company's account to a company controlled by my mother." "Exactly. Technically, the money moves out of the scope of Caroline's assets, so it can't be claimed as a company asset in the division of property. But in practice, it remains under your complete control through your mother. We will set the sale price slightly below market value to create a compelling reason for a quick transaction," James revealed. The process began. James quickly handled the incorporation of Skyview Capital. Meanwhile, Caroline began preparing the sale documents on behalf of Caroline's with her trusted manager, Mr. Peterson. They had to move fast. The longer the property was in process, the greater the chance that news would reach Michael. The moment Caroline most feared finally arrived one weekend. Michael approached her in an unusually cheerful mood. "Honey, I have a great idea," he said, using an endearment he hadn't used in a long time. "Let's go to the villa next week. We can bring Jessica to show it to her. Let's call it an early preview before everything is official." Caroline's stomach clenched. The request was not only insensitive but dangerously close to her plan. Refusing outright would arouse suspicion. "Michael," Caroline replied, trying to sound weary. "I don't want to go there right now. Too many memories." She paused, then added the information she had prepared. "Besides, the villa is currently on the market for a long-term rental. Mr. Peterson is handling it, and he told me there are several serious candidates coming to see it this week. It's better not to get in the way. If we get rental income later, it will be good for us too, right?" The bait worked. At the prospect of passive income from the villa, Michael's eyes lit up. "Oh, good idea. You really have a talent for making money," he praised her, oblivious to the irony of his words. "Okay, leave it to Mr. Peterson then. Tell him to charge the highest possible rent. We'll split the profits later." "Of course, honey," Caroline replied with a faint smile. But Michael was impulsive. 3 days later, he decided to drive out to the Hamptons by himself without telling Caroline. He made the excuse of wanting to check on the villa's condition before it was rented, but his real intention was to take some pictures to show off to Jessica. The moment Michael's car pulled into the villa's driveway, Caroline's heart, miles away, seemed to stop. She had just received a short text from Mr. Text to Nestor Elaine. "Peterson, the boss is here, stay calm. The situation is under control." At the villa, Mr. Peterson, a middle-aged man whose loyalty to Caroline was unwavering, was playing his part to perfection. He was indeed there with a young couple, his niece and her husband, who were pretending to be potential foreign renters. "Good morning, sir," Mr. Peterson greeted politely as Michael walked in. He introduced himself as an associated real estate agent, not just the manager of Caroline's. "I'm the owner of this house," Michael said with arrogance, surveying the living room. "I understand my wife said she was renting it out." "That's correct, sir. I'm here with a couple, potential candidates from Germany," Mr. Peterson replied smoothly, gesturing to his relatives, who nodded politely. Michael was satisfied. He walked through the villa, picturing himself and Jessica relaxing by the pool. He even had a brief conversation with Mr. Peterson to give him instructions. "Make sure to collect the rent in dollars, of course. It's a premium property, and report back to me as well. I need to be in the loop." "Understood, sir," Mr. Peterson replied diplomatically, subtly emphasizing once again who the legal owner of the asset was. "I will, of course, report to Mrs. Caroline Wells, who is the director of the company that owns this property, and she will pass it along to you." Michael frowned slightly at that but didn't think too much of it. After taking a few photos, he left. As soon as Michael's car disappeared from view, Mr. Peterson immediately called Caroline. "That was close, ma'am," Mr. Peterson said, his breath sounding relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson. You have no idea how much your help means to me," Caroline replied, her hand still trembling slightly as she held the phone. The incident served as a catalyst to accelerate everything. 2 days later, the purchase agreement between Caroline's and Skyview Capital was signed before the notary chosen by James. The hundreds of thousands of dollars from the villa's sale were transferred that same day. The money was now safe, tucked away in a corporate account Michael couldn't touch. That night, Caroline stared blankly out her bedroom window. She had successfully defended another fortress, but the victory felt hollow. She was having to dismantle the architecture of her life, brick by brick, just to save it from the partner who should have been her co-builder. Every step forward in her plan felt like a step back from the beautiful memories they once shared, but she knew there was no turning back. She had to keep unraveling the tapestry of their wealth until not a single thread was left entangled in Michael's greed. After successfully securing the villa, Caroline faced her biggest challenge, protecting the crown jewel of her empire, Caroline's. This company wasn't just an asset, it was the embodiment of her hard work, creativity, and years of sacrifice. Letting Michael take half of it felt like giving up half of her identity. Selling the company was not an option. She couldn't abandon the business she had built from the ground up. The strategy she devised with James was far more elegant and complex. They would restructure the share ownership based on a legally manipulated debt relationship. The foundation of this plan lay in a believable fact. 7 years ago, when Caroline started her boutique, she had received initial financial support from her mother. The amount wasn't huge, but it was enough to rent the first location and buy the initial inventory. That money had been considered a gift. There was never a repayment contract. Now, that gift would become a capital loan. James carefully drafted a backdated loan agreement. The document stipulated that Caroline's mother had loaned her the capital, and if it wasn't repaid in cash within 7 years, the loan would convert into 75% of the shares in Caroline's. The document was made to look authentic. "This is a gray area measure, Mrs. Wells," James warned on an encrypted call, "but it's legally difficult to challenge, especially since there's proof of the initial bank transfer from your mother to you. We can claim that was the loan disbursement. A legal battle would come down to your mother's word against your husband's, and in family-run businesses, judges tend to trust written contracts more." Caroline agreed. She would rather take a risk in the gray area than serve her life's work on a silver platter. The next step was to enlist the help of her most trusted insider, Mr. Peterson. One afternoon, Caroline called Mr. Peterson into her office at the main boutique. She closed the door and poured a cup of tea for the man who had been with her since the boutique was just a small, cramped room. "Mr. Peterson," Caroline began in a serious tone, "I am divorcing my husband." Mr. Peterson looked at her with concern, but not surprise. As someone close to Caroline, he had long sensed trouble in his boss's home. "That is regrettable news, ma'am. Whatever you decide, you have my support." "Thank you," Caroline said sincerely. "That's why I need your help. Michael believes he is entitled to half of this company that we built together from scratch. I cannot allow that. It's not just my problem, Mr. Peterson. It's also about the future of you and all the employees who depend on this company." Caroline explained the plan to restructure the share ownership to her mother as a form of debt repayment. She didn't mention that the contract had just been created, only presenting it as an old obligation she had to fulfill. Mr. Peterson's loyalty did not waver. "Understood, ma'am. What do you need me to do?" "I need you to prepare all internal financial documents, balance sheets, and income statements. Everything must reflect that a debt obligation to the initial investor existed. We need to make the entire paper trail look natural and consistent," Caroline instructed. Over the next week, Caroline and Mr. Crowley Peterson worked overtime, reviewing old books, inserting notes that supported the capital loan story, and preparing all the necessary documents for a fictitious general shareholders meeting. The only attendees at that meeting would be Caroline as the majority shareholder and a few management-level employees who held minor shares as part of an incentive program. All of them were loyal to Caroline and would approve whatever she proposed. On the appointed day, the share transfer process was executed at the notary's office. Her mother, a kindly-looking retired woman with eyes as sharp as her daughter's, signed the documents without asking many questions. She just took Caroline's hand and said, "Take back what's yours, sweetheart." With the notary's stamp and signature on the deed, 75% ownership of Caroline's officially passed into her mother's hands. Caroline would continue to serve as the CEO and have full control over the company's daily operations, but on paper, she was no longer the majority owner. The intrinsic value of the company was now safe from Michael's legal reach. That afternoon, after it was all over, Caroline stood alone in the closed main boutique. She touched the beautiful dresses on display, feeling the texture of the high-quality fabrics. She had saved her kingdom, but the feeling of victory was tinged with bitterness. She felt like a general who had to burn her own fields so they wouldn't fall into enemy hands. She had protected her business by giving up its official ownership, a painful but necessary sacrifice. She looked at herself in the large corner mirror. Her face looked tired, but her eyes shone with an unyielding determination. The battle wasn't over yet, but her main fortress now stood strong and impenetrable. As time went on, Michael's arrogant calm began to slowly crumble. Jessica, who had been waiting patiently at first, grew increasingly impatient. The vision of the lavish life Michael had promised seemed more and more distant, and she began to take her frustration out on him. "It's been almost 2 months. When is this going to be over?" Jessica demanded on a call, her voice sharp. "I'm tired of waiting in this tiny apartment. I saw a place on the Upper East Side, but prices keep going up. Just hang on a little longer, sweetheart." Michael tried to soothe her. Legal proceedings take time. Caroline said she's organizing all the financial reports for a fair distribution. She's cooperating. Cooperating? A sarcastic laugh came from the other end of the line. Is she organizing, or is she hiding? You're too soft, Michael. You need to take control. Check all her accounts, her investments. Maybe she's already moved all the money. Are we going to start from scratch with empty hands? Jessica's words stung Michael's pride. Being called soft was the greatest insult to him. Spurred by the doubt Jessica had planted, he decided to start investigating. Not wanting to appear flustered in front of Caroline, he acted in secret. That night, while Caroline was in the shower, Michael slipped into her study, turned on her laptop, and tried to open the portal for one of the joint investment accounts he hadn't checked in a long time. He entered the username and password he remembered. Login failed. He tried again, but it kept failing. The message on the screen read, "Incorrect username or password." He tried the recover password function, expecting the recovery link to be sent to his email. But the system informed him that the link had been sent to the primary registered email address, which, as far as he knew, was Caroline's personal email. A bad feeling started to creep over him. The next day, he called the brokerage firm's customer service. After a complex identity verification process, he finally got to speak with an agent. "I can't log into my account. The account number is XXX, Michael complained. "Yes, sir, let me check," the agent said. After a moment of silence, the agent spoke again. "According to our records, sir, the password for this account was changed 2 weeks ago by the primary account holder, Mrs. Caroline Wells." Michael's heart beat a little faster. "Changed? Why was it changed?" "We don't have information on the reason, sir. As a secondary account holder, you are not authorized to change the password or request a recovery. You'll have to contact the primary holder." Michael hung up, furious. That night, he mustered the courage to confront Caroline. He tried to use a relaxed tone, feigning a casual inquiry. "Caroline, I tried to get into our investment account earlier, but I couldn't. It seems the password has changed." Caroline, who was reading a book on the sofa, looked up. Her expression was calm, without the slightest trace of surprise. She had been expecting this question. "Oh, that," she replied dryly. "My financial advisor took care of it. During the divorce process, it was advised that she have temporary access to ensure there are no buy or sell transactions from either party before the court's official decision. She told me, it's a standard procedure to protect the assets and ensure everything is fair and transparent." The explanation was ingenious. Caroline used the words fair, transparent, and protect. She threw back at Michael the very words he had used to placate her. The reason sounded highly professional, logical, and even seemed to benefit Michael himself. Michael's suspicion subsided a little, but didn't disappear entirely. "Financial advisor? Since when do you use one?" "Since you asked for a divorce?" Caroline answered curtly, her eyes returning to her book. "I don't know anything about divorce, law, or finances. I needed someone to advise me so I wouldn't make a misstep that would harm me or you." That answer silenced Michael. A weak, ignorant woman seeking professional help sounded reasonable, but the seed of doubt was planted. He started noticing little things. Caroline would hastily end her calls when he entered the room. She no longer left her laptop open. She seemed to go out more often with the excuse of meeting suppliers or managing the branches. But when she returned, her face looked tired yet determined. This was no longer passive sadness but focused activity. One night, Michael woke up to find the side of the bed empty. He searched the house and found Caroline sitting on the balcony, simply staring into the night's darkness. She wasn't crying, she was just sitting silently with her back straight. There was an aura of strange strength around her, an aura that frightened Michael a little. "You're still up?" he asked. Caroline turned her head, her eyes clear in the garden lights. "Just getting some air. I have a lot on my mind." Michael went back to bed alone that night, his anxiety growing. Jessica's complaints kept ringing in his ears, mixing with the image of an increasingly mysterious and unreadable Caroline. For the first time, he felt that his plan, which he had considered perfect, might have a flaw. The name of that flaw was Caroline. He tried to dismiss the feeling as paranoia, reassuring himself that everything was still going according to plan. But deep down, he knew the calm before the storm was over, and dark clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon. Time seemed to be moving faster and faster, each moment bringing Caroline closer to the finish line she had set for herself. Michael was now talking more often with his lawyer about preparing the final documents. Caroline knew she had only a few days left, maybe a week at most, before the divorce petition was officially filed and all joint assets would be automatically frozen by law. She had to complete the last step. Her final asset of interest was the joint bank account, the household operating account, that had until now been a symbol of their financial union, in name only. Compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars she had secured in investments and real estate, the amount in this account was relatively small. But for Caroline, securing these funds held a deep symbolic meaning. It was about severing the last tie that bound her to Michael, liquidating the last financial remnant of their old life. That night, Caroline waited until well past midnight. Michael's faint snores from the bedroom were the signal that she could move safely. She slipped into the study. As she turned on the laptop, a familiar focus enveloped her. This would likely be the last time she performed this covert operation. She opened the online banking portal and looked at the screen. The joint account balance showed about $35,000. Most of it came from her and Michael's salaries from the past month, plus a remnant of other miscellaneous funds. She could have taken it all. The temptation was there, a little whisper that wanted to leave that account at zero, to return all the pain to his heart. But Caroline shook her head at that whisper. Her goal was not blind revenge but calculated justice. Her victory had to be clean, impeccable, and as unimpeachable as possible. She opened the transaction history and did a careful calculation. Michael's salary from the last month was about $4,000. The remnant of other funds she couldn't directly claim as her own was about $1,000, total $5,000. She decided to leave that amount in the account. She would only take the portion she could clearly prove came from her salary transfer and business income. She opened the transfer menu and moved $30,000 to her new personal account. The transaction went through smoothly in seconds. When she finished, she looked at the remaining balance of $5,000, enough for Michael to survive for a month or two. This wasn't an act of generosity, it was a strategic measure. By leaving an amount, she made it difficult for Michael to accuse her of total theft or leaving him destitute. It showed that she was not moved by greed, but by prudent calculation. She closed the laptop. An immense relief washed over her, but also an unexpected sadness. The door was now truly closed. No more financial connections. No more ours, only mine and his. Her silent war was over. All that was left was the declaration of victory. The next day, Caroline began preparing for the confrontation. She didn't pack her bags in a grand way. That might seem desperate and arouse suspicion if Michael saw it. Instead, she packed a single, medium-sized suitcase. Inside, she put her favorite clothes, a few precious personal items, her laptop, and most importantly, a dark blue document folder. That folder was her arsenal. Inside were copies of her new bank account statements, showing a fantastic balance, the notarized sale contract for the villa, the documents for the new ownership structure of Caroline's, with her mother's name as the majority shareholder, and a brief summary from her lawyer on the legality of all her actions, perfectly organized. Every paper inside that folder was a bullet ready to be fired. For the next 2 days, she followed her usual routine but maintained a heightened level of alertness. She waited. Every time Michael came home from work, her heart pounded, wondering if this was the moment. And on Friday afternoon, the moment came. Michael returned home with a lighter step than usual. A satisfied smile played on his lips. In his hand, he carried a brown leather briefcase that looked expensive. "We're dining out tonight," Michael said with a feigned, cheerful tone. "I have something to show you. Think of it as a celebration of the beginning of our new separate lives." Caroline looked at the briefcase in Michael's hand and then slowly nodded. "No need to go out. Let's talk here," she replied, her calm voice belying the storm within. The dawn of the final chapter of her life with Michael was breaking. The stage was set, and Caroline, the director and lead actress, was ready for the final scene. They were sitting opposite each other at the same mahogany dining table where the demand for divorce was first made, but this time, the dynamic was different. Michael radiated an aura of victory, while Caroline exuded an icy calm. Michael placed the brown leather briefcase on the table with a theatrical flourish. "Ready, Caroline?" he began. His tone was condescending, as if speaking to a child. "My lawyer is very good. All the papers are perfect, the divorce settlement, the list of joint assets to be split 50-50, everything. We just have to sign before the notary tomorrow and file it with the court. Quick, clean, and no drama." He pushed the briefcase towards Caroline. "Read it first so you're satisfied. I've detailed everything. This house, the villa, the savings, the value of your business, we're splitting it fairly, Caroline." Caroline didn't even touch the briefcase. She let it sit between them like a monument to Michael's greed. Instead, she picked up her own blue folder that had been on the chair beside her. With equally calm movements, she placed it on the table. "I've also prepared some documents for you to look at," Caroline said, her voice clear and unwavering. Michael let out a small laugh, a laugh of contempt. "What documents? A letter from your spiritual guru?" "No need, Caroline. This isn't an emotional issue, it's a legal one." Caroline ignored the sarcasm. She opened the blue folder and took out the first sheet. It was a copy of the joint account statement dated that day. "This is our joint account," Caroline said, sliding the paper towards Michael. "The balance is $5,000. That's $2,500 for you, $2,500 for me. Fair, right?" Michael's face changed. His smile vanished. "What are you talking about? Our savings are in the hundreds of thousands." Caroline took out the second sheet, the statement from her new bank account, with a long row of zeros at the end. "Those are my savings, not our savings. Money from my salary, company bonuses, and investment gains. All moved here." Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that." "Oh, but I can," Caroline retorted, now pulling out the third sheet, the sale contract for the villa. "And as for the villa, you're too late. That villa was never a personal asset, it was a company asset. And I, as the administrator of Caroline's at the time, decided to sell it last month for business efficiency. Here is the legal sale contract." Michael snatched the paper from her hands. He saw the name of her company, Caroline's, as the seller, and an unknown name, Skyview Capital, as the buyer. His hands began to tremble. This is impossible. I never consented." "Your consent wasn't needed. It was a corporate transaction," Caroline explained with lethal patience. "And the money from the sale went into the company's account. Money that, of course, cannot be divided as joint personal property." Michael was breathing heavily, his face turning red with a mixture of rage and a slowly creeping fear. "The company, at least I'm entitled to half of your company. We built it together." "Did we?" Caroline arched an eyebrow. She pulled out the final, most deadly document, a copy of the deed of ownership change for Caroline's. "According to this notarized deed, I am now only a minority shareholder in my own company. 75% of the shares belong to my mother as a condition for repaying the capital I borrowed when I started the business, a debt that came due just before you asked for a divorce. What a coincidence, right?" Michael stared at the document. Caroline's mother's name was clearly written as the majority shareholder. His legs felt weak. All his plans, the life with Jessica, his luxurious future, it all crumbled before his eyes in less than 5 minutes. This is fraud," he yelled, slamming his hand on the table. "It's illegal. You've stolen from me. I'm going to sue you. I will destroy you." For the first time, Caroline smiled. Not a warm smile, but a cold one, filled with victory. She stood up from her chair. "Sue me. My lawyer will be delighted to face you in court. But before you do, ask your lawyer. Ask him if it's illegal for a wife to manage assets legally registered in her name. If it's illegal to sell company assets. If it's illegal for someone to pay their debts." Caroline paused, letting her words sink in. "You said I was weak. You were wrong. My only weakness was letting you underestimate me for so long, believing for so long that the man sleeping next to me wanted what was best for me. Now I have taken back everything that is mine." She walked to the front door where her suitcase was waiting. "Go build your new life with Jessica. But you'll have to lay the first stone all by yourself. Goodbye, Michael." With that, Caroline grabbed the handle of her suitcase, opened the door, and walked out into the cool night without a single look back. The sound of the door closing behind her was like the bang of a judge's gavel, the sound that announced the trial was over and the sentence had been served. Michael was left alone in the large, now empty house, surrounded by the paper fragments of his shattered plans. The silence Caroline left behind was more deafening than his screams moments before. For a few minutes, Michael just sat there staring at the two briefcases on the table, his brown leather one, now useless, and Caroline's blue folder, which had become the tombstone of his future. Reality hit him with the force of a freight train. This wasn't a nightmare, it was real. His first reaction was a panic-fueled denial. He grabbed his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dial his lawyer's number. "Mr. Perez," he yelled as soon as the call connected, "no time for formalities. My wife has tricked me. She's moved all the money, sold the villa, transferred the company shares. This is fraud. We have to sue her. We have to freeze everything." On the other end of the line came a tired sigh from the lawyer. "Calm down, Mr. Wells. Explain slowly. When did these transactions take place?" "I don't know, probably in the last few weeks." "And has our divorce petition been officially filed with the court yet?" the lawyer asked, his tone sharp. "No, I was planning to do it tomorrow." A long silence followed. Michael could feel the bad omen thickening. "Mr. Perez, are you there?" "Mr. Wells." The lawyer's voice was flat and professional. "I have to tell you a harsh reality. If all these transactions occurred before our divorce petition was officially filed, and those assets were legally in your wife's name or her company's name, then what she has done is, with near certainty, completely legal." "Legal?" Michael whimpered, unable to believe what he was hearing. "That isn't theft, sir. That's called managing one's personal estate. Legally, until there is a court order or an asset freeze, she is free to do as she pleases with the properties that are hers. You should have filed the petition as soon as you decided to divorce. You gave her too much time. From a legal standpoint, she didn't trick you. She was just smarter than you." The phone slipped from Michael's hand and clattered to the floor. Smarter, the word echoed in his head. Caroline, whom he considered weak, submissive, and foolish, had outplayed him so completely. His next thought was Jessica. He had to tell her. With still trembling hands, he called his lover. "Hey, honey, so, what happened? When are we signing?" Jessica's voice was cheerful and full of hope. "Jessica, there's a problem," Michael whispered, his voice hoarse. "The money, the properties. Caroline took it all. It's all gone." Silence. Not a surprised silence, but a cold, deadly one. "What do you mean, it's gone?" Jessica asked, her voice dropping several octaves. "She moved it all, sold the villa. The shares are in her mother's name. There's only a little left in the joint account and this house, which still has a mortgage," Michael explained, his voice breaking. A harsh, unpleasant laugh erupted from the other end of the phone. "Gone? You just let her take it all? Are you an idiot? I threw my life away for your promises, and now you're telling me it's all gone? I didn't know she would do this. You thought she was a fool. Turns out the fool was you," Jessica cut in cruelly. "I'm not living a life of hardship. I'm not starting from scratch with a loser like you. Don't contact me again." The line went dead. Click. Just like that. The true love he had used as a reason to destroy his marriage turned out to be nothing more than a bank balance. Now he was alone. Truly alone. Panic turned to utter despair. He had to contact Caroline. He had to beg. He picked up the phone and began sending a barrage of texts. The first message was full of anger. "Caroline Wells, you're going to regret this. I'm not going to stand by and do nothing." No reply. The second message contained threats. "I will tell everyone how twisted you are. I'll ruin your reputation and your business." Still silence. The third message started to soften with negotiation. Okay, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's talk this over again. Don't do this. I'll give you whatever you want." Still no answer. Finally, his mask of arrogance fell away completely, and it became a pathetic plea. "Caroline, please, "Don't leave me like this. I have nothing. I'm sorry for everything. Please, just answer me." He waited for an hour, his eyes glued to the phone screen, hoping for any sign of life. Suddenly, he tried to send another message, but something was strange. The message wouldn't deliver. He tried to call. The call wouldn't connect. Caroline had blocked him. That realization was the final blow. It wasn't screams or insults that destroyed him. It was Caroline's total silence. That silence was his sentence. He was no longer considered worthy of even a response. Michael slumped onto the sofa in the dark living room. The grand house, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a cold tomb. He was surrounded by expensive furniture and empty memories. The wreckage of his greed was scattered all around him, and he was the sole inhabitant of those ruins, swallowed by a regret that had come far too late. 1 year passed. Time, which had once felt like a slow enemy in his anxiety-filled days, had now become a healing ally. A year proved to be enough time to tear down one world and also enough to build a completely new one. In a penthouse with panoramic views of the glittering New York night, Caroline was starting her morning. The fresh city air that greeted her on the balcony carried the scent of urban hustle and new beginnings. She no longer lived in the large house filled with bitter memories. She had moved on not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Her appearance had changed too. She wore her hair shorter, in a chic style that framed a face that now radiated confidence at all times. Her clothes were no longer just cute local boutique dresses, but crisp business suits and elegant evening gowns from international designers. She was no longer just the owner of a local boutique. She was an entrepreneur whose name was beginning to make waves in the European fashion world. That morning, she had just finished a video call with her team in New York. Caroline's, now officially her own again after she repurchased the shares from her mother with personal funds, was in the process of a massive expansion. They were preparing to open their first flagship boutique abroad, in Milan. "All preparations are on track, Director," reported Mr. Peterson, appearing on the laptop screen with a cheerful face. "The logistics partners are ready, and the visual team has finalized the interior design. We are on schedule." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson," Caroline said with a sincere smile. "Thank you for your hard work and the teams. I couldn't have done this without you all." After finishing the call, Caroline went to the coffee machine and prepared a strong espresso. As she sipped it, she looked out at the horizon. The divorce itself had been finalized 6 months ago. Through his desperate lawyer, Michael had tried to fight back. He sued Caroline for fraud and embezzlement, but James's legal team easily refuted all allegations. It was proven that all of Caroline's transactions were legally conducted before the petition was filed and were related to assets under her legal control. In the end, Michael got nothing more than what Caroline had left for him. His divorce was granted with the division of assets according to the final state, which meant Michael received only half of the remaining funds in the joint account and the obligation to continue paying the mortgage on the house by himself. Caroline sometimes thought of him, but there was no pain anymore. The memory was now like watching an old movie about someone else. She had learned that Michael's betrayal was not a reflection of her shortcomings, but of the fragility of his character. The pain had been the fertilizer for her strength, forcing her to grow into a version of herself she had never imagined before. She felt at peace, whole, and most importantly, free. On the other side of New York, in a cramped studio apartment in an old building, Michael was living his new life. The big house had to be sold because he couldn't afford the payments. After paying off the remaining mortgage and other expenses, there wasn't much money left. He now worked at a startup with a salary far below his previous standard of living. That evening, he was sitting alone on a worn-out sofa, his room lit only by the glow of his phone. He was scrolling through social media, an old habit, one that initiated his downfall and had now become his daily source of torture. His finger stopped on a post from a famous business magazine. It was a photo from the Entrepreneur of the Year award ceremony. In the center of the stage, wearing a stunning burgundy dress, was a woman holding a crystal trophy with a radiant smile. That woman was Caroline. Michael stared at the photo for a long time. The woman in the picture looked so foreign not because of her hair or her clothes, but because of the aura of power and happiness that emanated from her. That was a Caroline he never knew, or more accurately, a Caroline he never wanted to see. Just then, the final, most painful realization hit him. He realized that what he had thrown away wasn't just money or assets. He had thrown away a woman who had the intelligence to build an empire, the strength to weather storms, and the loyalty to stand by his side. All the qualities he had mistaken for weaknesses, Caroline's patience, integrity, kindness, were actually the pillars of her strength. He had tossed away a diamond, blinded by the shine of cheap glass, named Jessica. Ah, Jessica. The last time Michael had seen her was also on social media, posing affectionately with another older, wealthy man. The cycle continued, and he was just one of the casualties of his own stupidity. Regret felt like acid in his stomach, not just regret for the loss of wealth, but a deeper regret for his foolishness, his arrogance, and his failure as a man. He turned off his phone, and the darkness of the room seemed to swallow him whole. The only property he had left was an eternal, crushing regret. Back in the penthouse, Caroline set down her coffee cup. She looked at her reflection in the large picture window. Behind her, the elegant interior of the apartment was visible. In front of her, a glittering cityscape stretched out, full of promise and opportunity. She no longer looked back. The past was a lesson, not a prison. With a faint, confident smile, she turned away from the window, ready to greet the new day and ready to conquer a new world. The dawn had arrived, and this dawn was entirely her own.